What's up, everybody? This is our fourth iteration of the Fighting Foolishness podcast. Parker is Shayla. Right? And Kosh is sitting over here. He's going to join us in a minute, I'm sure.
Whenever he feels
like it. But in any case, today is an interesting day for the podcast because I don't know what you guys know about us. We both live in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And we just got hit with one of the worst tornadoes that we've had in almost 70 years. It has caused a lot of chaos and a lot of destruction, made national news. I don't know if they're still talking about it because I don't watch a lot of national news, but I've heard that it's been on all the news networks. A lot of my family's reached out to me from all over the country asking how I'm doing. I know Shayla's had a similar experience.
Yes.
And there are areas of our city that are very densely populated that have been utterly destroyed. I've learned a lot about just kind of what happens following a tornado like this in the past week because we've been inundated with the things. We have one of the largest parks in the country here in St. Louis, Forest Park. I believe it's bigger than Central Park, many of the others, yes. by a lot. And there's a major street that lines. There's actually a couple major streets that line Forest Park. The trees are totally upended and turned on their sides. There's a lot of homes that also line the park. The trees are totally turned over, and these are not small trees. These are 100-year-old trees that have been turned over and upended. We have an area of our city called North St. Louis, and that's just the general name for it. And it's kind of shocking. Words cannot describe the level of utter destruction in North St. Louis. Roofs being torn off of homes, brick homes being leveled to pieces. And we're now in the phase of it. I don't even think we're out of the phase of it, of just shock from it, because people have just been responding. Right.
Yeah. West St. Louis as well has been heavily affected. So these are St. Louis city areas. They're not the county. It's definitely
for the most part.
For the most part, is that's affected. I did hear that U City and Clayton, which are
bordering,
they're municipalities in the county, they were affected. Mm-hmm. Yet most of the devastation that we're seeing is concentrated in the city, and they're concentrated in areas, the Forest Park area, Central West End. Those particular areas, they're near a medical district. They are tourist attraction, colleges, things of that nature. So those areas will be, honestly, Forest Park, if you drive through it right now, you can see some of the trees still laying around, yet
there were priorities.
They're cleared.
To clear those
it's
areas.
Cleared. Yeah, the city's got those areas cleared pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Yet in North City, even in the west side, those areas have not been cleared. They're mostly out of the streets, yet the true work of it is we're nowhere near done. As a person who's currently living in an area that isn't impacted by the tornado, I'm in shock. I cannot fathom the level of emotion of people who actually are living down there in that area right now. I will say that I've been highly impressed with St. Louis taking care of St. Louis. The amount of volunteers who have been coming out, the amount of organizations who have been doing things. This is a holiday weekend. We're coming up on Memorial Day. Yep. And many of the things that would normally be happening in the city have basically been out. I'm not even going to say delayed. I'll just say canceled, because people are instead helping. They're asking for donations. They're asking if you come, we're going to give X percentage, or if you order this, all of those sales will go towards this. Particularly in those areas, we are. I was in North City yesterday for the culture STL. I'm actually gonna name all of the organizations who are currently that I know of that are currently actively doing things in the city, because they've been actively posting them, and I've been actively reposting them so that people can get access to different things. Now where is?
I mean, at a time like this, I mean, resources are everything. There's no amount of preparedness that can prepare anybody for experiencing what the people who were in the path of this tornado are experiencing. I mean, and all these organizations that Shayla's about to mention.
Yeah, I'm looking at videos trying to find their names, because I'm like, I'm gonna have to look at what I've already shared to find their names listed. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, no, don't apologize. I mean, it's so vitally important, and you just get to see what it looks like for a community to come together, when something like this happens. Because I've been through a flood before, but my flood, by the standards of what they're experiencing here in the city, was nothing. Yeah. To just think this is the worst tornado. St. Louis has not had an experience of a tornado like this since, I believe, the 50s. It's like 1959 or something like that. I'll in the comments, I'll double check the exact date, but it's been almost 70 years since we've experienced a tornado like this in the city, and there are sides of brick homes that have been torn off the house. Completely. And so you drive down the street and you can see into people's living rooms, and for two this is an area where they're both like multifamily homes and single family homes. In the multifamily homes, you can see on the second floor, like the second or the first floor, the whole side of the brick house gone, and you're looking into somebody's living room and their kitchen. And I mean, just imagine waking up and in 5 minutes, the side of your house being gone, or the side of your apartment just not even being there. Yeah. Like that's effectively what happened, and whole roofs being just ripped off of houses by the wind. I mean, and Shayla was just telling me a minute ago about tornado lung, which was the whole thing, and I heard the term somewhere. I think like on my Instagram feed or something. But the whole concept of when buildings like that are destroyed, for anybody that knows anything about construction, like all of the bad stuff in a house or in a building, generally speaking, as long as it's not disturbed, as long as you're smart enough to leave it alone, it'll leave you alone. But when you get something like a tornado, it's completely disruptive and destructive, and all of those bad things, whether it be asbestos or any other hazardous chemicals, lead paint, mold, all of that stuff goes in the air. And so all of the crews that are working around the tornado damage and around those buildings, that's why, masking up is so important, because all that stuff goes into the air, and we don't think about these things on a normal day like anymore, especially since since COVID.
And let me add, from the information I've read, tornado lung, which involves asbestos and lead paint and mold and any other type of pathogen that could be growing. And we believe, because our houses look like they're okay, we believe that they're okay, yet it's just it's dead wood. It's not, there's moisture always. So to protect yourself, if you're going and doing any of that type of thing, you actually have to wear an N95 to protect yourself from it.
Yep.
A regular surgical mask doesn't prevent asbestos from getting through. And so...
And N95s don't even prevent asbestos. They may provide the most protection. Outside of having like a full blown asbestos rated respirator, which they make.
Yes.
N95s, they're about as good as you can get for just
for
what I'm going to loosely call a basic N95 face mask.
Very much so. So the organizations that I'm aware of that are doing things, Action STL, For the Ville, Invest STL, and For the Culture STL. They have organized for both the North and West Side. They've been able to get other organizations because they were basically the first boots on the ground. For the Culture STL and Action STL, they were out. Those two organizations, they went out within hours of the tornado hitting, and so they just went out driving to assess the damage, and from that need, they were able to connect with people within their network, and just hit social media, and from that, literally people in St. Louis and the region have just continued to show up every day. And so there's a couple businesses. I know Prince Beauty is one that I saw on social media, and then King's Customs. Both of those businesses have, in effect, they're still there, and you could technically get some things done, yet they are in a heavily hit area of the city. And so King's Customs, the owner has gone on social media several times and said, I don't feel right doing business right now when there's people who can't eat, and because their house is, and literally I drove through that area yesterday, and there was a sign that was next to his business. It was a block away. So I'm driving and I'm looking and I'm like, what? Like, it looks too clear. Like, it looks like I can see too far. I don't even know. And,
it's weird because there were trees there. I couldn't even place. I hadn't been there in a while, and I was like, I can't even place what's missing yet. What's missing? But it wasn't. And the thing about it is, it wasn't just trees, because
it's
a lot of things.
There's a lot of things there. One of the businesses, the front facade of the building is there, and as you drive, the entire side is gone. And this isn't a wooden structure. This is a brick structure that, and most of these are red bricks. And while we're sitting here, I'll look up the red bricks, because I know the red bricks of St. Louis is an entire thing. They don't make them anymore. They don't make them anymore. They're worth quite a bit of money. Not only are they worth quite a bit of money because of what's in them and the structural soundness of them. So something that is structurally sound, completely destroyed. Yeah. Completely blown away.
And it's interesting because, for those people that own homes, especially in the city, and when you're getting insurance and things, and they're like, because it's a brick house, they want to insure for the replacement value of the house. Mm. And that's assuming that they rebuild a brick house, which nobody does. That's not really a thing. You won't have bricklayers coming out fixing damage. They'll probably tear the house down and replace it with frame or something.
Well, not necessarily. The United Way is compiling a list of skilled laborers. Well, and so to go out and volunteer and do things. And
they're not gonna relay the brick.
They won't?
No.
Okay.
That's that's so unlikely. Like, even when you see a brick facade on a house now, it's a frame house that has a brick facade. That has a brick facade. It's not a brick house. So I would be kind of shocked. Okay, I understand. Like when you go through new construction and you see when you see something that looks like brick, it's not full brick. Like they didn't go and lay each of those bricks. They it's usually a framing,
A frame
and the
with
brick is
with
just
a
a
brick,
facade.
a facade.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I'd be kind of shocked if reconstruction meant that. Like, we'll have to see. I mean, only time is gonna tell, and it's way too early to know. But it's like, what? I think everybody in this, especially, it's weird because the people in the city proper are in shock, as they should be. The further out you go, it's interesting because there's a lot of areas that weren't affected, and for those areas, it's just a Tuesday afternoon.
It was another storm. There was a storm a few days ago that was bad that there's no real recollection of, and
what do you say and what do you do?
goodness,
There's so.
I was infuriated. I was infuriated at the disconnection. And how, I relate that disconnection of people who are 5 miles away. I relate that disconnection to, the state of our country. And so it infuriated me. There was no other place for me to go other than that, because if you can't care about your neighbor, and the thing about it is, something that I realize, and I think I do it because I'm a military kid. I'm not really sure, but you do it too, and you're not a military kid. Yet I'll drive for whatever it is I want.
True.
So, me going into North City and helping, it's because I go over there and I participate over there in stuff. Me going to West St. Louis and helping is because I lived over there. Don't live over there anymore, but I lived over there. My kids went to school there. We have friends there. We have friends in North City. So I don't want to talk to them on the phone about it. I don't want to offer thoughts and prayers. I want to help. And so there's 1,000 different ways to help. And because I wasn't able to go and physically help up until yesterday, the way I was helping was sharing the resources. Because even if no one says anything, even if no one comments on it, that doesn't mean, I know that there's people who are on my social media page who see it, who can share it to the next person.
Absolutely.
And so, if you're watching our podcast and you're in the St. Louis region and you don't have time, you don't have money, whatever the thing may be.
We'll put a few links to donate.
Yeah, we'll put some links down there. So, you can donate. You can. There's great needs, and the list of needs are so long that I'm not gonna bother trying to rattle off anything. But anything. Mm-hmm. Share what you see on social media in regards to resources so that people can get the resources. This is an interesting topic because there's so much happening at one time that it's hard to focus
on one thing.
A friend of ours who lives probably 20 or 30 minutes out of the city, she told me how she was driving, wherever she was driving, sirens went off. The people in the city didn't have the luxury of sirens. Mm-hmm. They have been tested. They have been testing them.
They tested them the day before.
Yeah. On the day that they were needed, they didn't go off.
Yep.
On today, we're not going to talk about the fact that they didn't go off. I'm just going to draw that hard line in the sand and say we're not going to talk about it. We're going to mention the fact that it didn't go off and put a pin there in the event we so choose to go down that hellhole, because that's a hellhole. That wasn't a, yeah. So there's that. The fact that when you drove around yesterday, did you see any trucks that says city on them?
City? So I when I drove around, it was at night, and what I saw a lot of highway patrol out, and I saw one of the command center areas, but I haven't actually seen a ton of city trucks. I have not. I've seen a few, but not a lot. As I've driven around all over.
Yeah. That. Well, you know, I was out during the day. I saw one city truck.
Yeah.
I saw 5, and this was in North City. I saw 5 privately owned dump trucks. St. Louis City is showing up for St. Louis City. Like you know.
Well, and I mean, it's the challenging thing with where we are right now with this is that the public that are in these affected areas need a lot of help and support. Mm-hmm. And what I think about a lot, and I kind of alluded to it a few minutes ago, is just the notion that there's literally nothing that anybody can do to actually prepare for something like this. And the normal, and let me go a step further, like the normal family that has one house, couple of cars, either single, married, with kids, whatever. Most people have their home or their apartment, they have a vehicle, and then they can be responsible for themselves, and maybe if they have children or pets, be responsible for them. When something like this happens, you got to hope you have good insurance. You got to hope the good insurance that you have pays fast. And that's a whole can of worms, because depending on how you're set up, is going to dictate what resources are actually available to you. And a lot of the conversation we're having in the country about the relationship between cities, states, and the federal government, all of it shows up in something like this. Mm-hmm. And what really kind of, what it's a perfect illustration in many ways of, is that if you look at how our system of government is actually set up, there are only a handful of states that actually can afford to support the people in the states. Most, and I mean a handful, and I'm not saying, that's not a throwaway statement, that's actually a very serious statement. Money gets moved around the country from wealthy states to not so wealthy states. States like California, Texas, and I actually don't know where Missouri stands in it, but states like California and Texas, very wealthy states. So and this is the most rudimentary way I'm going to put this. So I'm sure like the economists and accountants and all this stuff will want to nitpick what I'm saying, but ultimately California and states like California and Texas pay money to the federal government. It gets in the federal government's hands. And then states that actually don't have a lot of money, like many southern states, Mississippi is one of them. That's one of the poorest states. I think Alabama, maybe. I say I don't know where Missouri comes into this, but those states receive monies in order to support various infrastructure and things that they have. And so when you have a whole city, a somewhat, for Missouri, St. Louis is a very densely populated area. The two major cities in Missouri are St. Louis and Kansas City. A lot of the rest of the state is rural. Not all of it, but a lot of it. The two I think anchors would be considered St. Louis and Kansas City. And so when you have a major area like St. Louis, even though this was an area that was very much underserved, it's still an area of densely populated tax-paying people. but the system is not set up the way that we have our system set up in the country, where that can stand alone in supporting itself. Like when something like this happens, when you have such a level of devastation that the side of your house is gone, the response is slow, and it's I want to say the word deep, but that's not the word. The response is going to be slow, and it's going to be very kind of devastating for the people that are there, because what's going to happen is, and where I originally started, is it starts with the insurance companies. And when I was involved with the flood several years ago, FEMA showed up, and they
were there within FEMA was there within 3 days.
Within 3 days.
FEMA's not here.
FEMA has not showed up here. And the people, like, what happens when the side of the building goes down is they condemn the house. They condemn the property. They tell, like, whether you own the property, and if you're a landlord and you have tenants in those properties, a lot of times they will just cancel the leases and kick the tenants out and tell them and condemn the property from a landlord perspective if the city doesn't.
Let me pause you right there.
Please.
So let me also add, in the midst of the tornadoes, people whose properties have been condemned from a storm that happened on May 16th, they were informed this week that they have until May 26th, if their property was condemned, to get everything that they want out.
Yeah.
And so, also, in regards to the insurance conversation, a lot of those properties were outright owned. From what I've heard, a lot of them were owned. Not necessarily owned by the people living in them, but definitely owned properties.
Sure. And
with them being properties that were fully owned, there's no requirement of insurance on it. So that is something that is being looked at as well. So
that just adds.
From what I've heard of the city's response, there have been people, and as well as volunteer organizations like I don't know who.
United Way.
Well, I'm not gonna say United Way, because it's a city going through, and they're labeling the houses.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure,
and some of them are putting stickers, but they were also doing it with spray paint initially, and so, the mayor's estimate several days ago was 5,000 people are displaced as of right now. Yet, Ameren, our electric company here, the last number I saw for them, there was 100,000 people without electricity.
Oh.
And so, these are people without electricity. So, well,
and there are a lot of people without electricity that still have their houses.
And
so that's not, I mean.
Yeah, well, yes. So
5,000 seems low.
Five.
That is.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that number. 5,000 seemed significantly low, in regards to the amount of devastation, because what was one of the things that I noticed in regards to this tornado, I didn't see. Just in driving around, I didn't see any whole blocks. So where the whole block was leveled, I saw whole blocks where parts of the houses were misplaced. Yet, it wasn't like you clearly know that there's no way that you can live in this place. It's very much so more of a structural type thing. And then there's some places, but also, since that tornado on, I want to say it was May 16th, we have had 2 or 3 rain systems come through. So people are having additional damage to their homes.
Well, and I mean, ultimately, when it comes to, like, ultimately where I was going with all that is that resources are so important, and resources are important just for the basic survival of the people, right? And when it comes to a lot of the condemnation of the properties and all that stuff, essentially just think about your house and your home, right? It takes a lot for people to give up their homes and to walk away from their homes. And it's a it's psychologically devastating, I'm just going to say, because what happens is, like, when the storm came through and you had people with very much severe damages to their houses, they didn't care. Well, I shouldn't say they didn't care. That's not the right way to. I don't want to be dismissive, but for a lot of people just didn't want to leave. Like, that was not a motivation for them to leave, if for nothing else, because there was no place for them to go.
Yeah.
Right. That was the thing, and that's where having a system set up to manage the people and at least get people to safety is so critically important, because a lot of the people that literally in a matter of minutes lost their homes, they didn't have any place to go. And so if you don't have two houses, you don't have a house somewhere, right? Yeah. Like a second house, then you've either got to rely on family or you've got to go to a hotel or something. It's not a straightforward thing.
There were some emergency shelters that popped up, yet think of it like this. The wall to your home is gone. Mm-hmm. So anything that you have, there are things that are valuable in the home to you that might not be valuable to someone else. But the fact that there are four walls protects the things that are valuable. And there's nothing protecting what's valuable. There's nothing protecting your memories. Nope. And not to mention, just thinking about it in the sense of community. How many, I spoke to a couple grandmothers yesterday, and just thinking about, like, what if this was grandma's house? What if this was the house that was considered the safe place for everyone?
Yep.
What if this was a place that everyone went back to if they fell on hard times? If, their kids needed a safe place while they tried to figure it out. And now it's gone. It's
just like that. And I mean, the tornado, the crazy part about it is, I ran into a guy who was in a different part of town when the tornado came through, and he said literally he was sitting at a stoplight, and he was like, all of this happened in the span of 2 traffic signals.
Wow.
I mean, think about that. 2 traffic signals. Red light, green light, yellow light, red light, green light, yellow light, red light. Everything gone. And what I would encourage people who are listening to this is, just imagine if that were you. Like, what would you really do if tomorrow, in the span of 10 minutes, something happened and everything changes? Because it can. And we take a lot of the things that we have for granted. And when you get into the political part, outside of just that whole system that's being very much disrupted and upended right now in the country, and anybody that thinks that they got it together, I promise that there is a limit. Unless you've got literally millions of dollars, then there's certain things that you just can't afford to have happen. And that money needs to be liquid in a bank. If you don't have it, then disaster can come, whether it be a tornado or a flood, because all these things have happened in the past 2 years. North Carolina was the whole flooding thing.
That was a few months ago.
That was last year.
That was in the fall.
Well, it was in the fall of last year. You got the wildfires in California. Mm-hmm. We've got the tornadoes here. And mind you, for this area, the tornado season is usually over in April. But we're in the middle of May and this stuff is happening. And
not to mention St. Louis City. St. Louis City itself is typically not affected.
Almost never. 70 years.
Even St. Louis County is like, when you hear about tornadoes in St. Louis, it's typically within a 30-mile radius of St. Louis County because it's an area that
it's just not that densely populated.
That isn't that densely populated. And so
and I think only maybe once or twice in the last 20 years have I heard of a tornado doing any major damage to someplace in the area.
Missouri isn't the poorest. Missouri is dead in the middle at number 24th. So in regards to
of the country and the redistributing of wealth and states and stuff, and that doesn't surprise me. That makes perfect sense. But a lot of we take a lot of things for granted. And a lot of people have a lot of very high-minded and charged opinions about what we should do with what and all this stuff. But when I look at an instance like this, and the same thing for California and North Carolina and places that are hit with this kind of devastation, and don't even let me get started on California. That's for another podcast. But when I see these things, it's like what if that were you? There's some things that the government has to step in and support because they're literally the only ones that can afford to do so. They're the only one. Those houses that got destroyed in North City are 80, 90, 100-year-old homes, if not more.
If not more.
I mean, like 70s would be young for those houses. Like they've been around for just a really long time. And so, and they're not replaceable. This is way past like we're just going to send a crew and put a roof on a house. This is the side of the brick house, bricks that you can't get anymore, just collapse and is gone. And it's sad and it's frustrating to see. And the people really need as much support as can be given, and this is the time to check in with yourself. Like, and all this wasn't. I don't think we really wanted this podcast to turn into like a big request line, but it's necessary. The city needs help, and the people need all the resources that can be mustered right now. It could be you. And it happens like that.
Yeah, it's very much so. My son asked me why I wanted him to go and volunteer. And I told him, I said, when people need help, we help them. Mm-hmm. It very often, actually not very often, it's very easy to forget that there were people who helped you. And in this moment, in the midst of this, the emotional toll of this cannot be measured.
Not at all.
As I was walking through North City, I was thinking about some of my friends from Louisiana who had lived through Hurricane Katrina, and how they talk about Katrina like she's a person. And not only do they talk about it like she's a person, like that hurricane was a person, every person who lived through that experience has something that they don't talk about. Every single one of them. Mm. And through talking to them different times privately, I've been able to get a feel for the uncertainty of it all. The fact that you didn't know if someone was coming to rescue you. You didn't know if you were going to die, not from the flood itself, but from the fact that the water stayed and there was no one coming. There was no way for you to know that anyone was coming. All of the infrastructure crumbled and under the weight of that storm. And yet the infrastructure was already crumbling. You just did, yet you got to see it in real time. And so this tornado, even though it doesn't have a name, walking on down the sidewalk, and the sidewalk is uneven. There's not one piece of the sidewalk that's even. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, was the sidewalk like this before? Or did the tornado, like, how exactly does that work in regards to a tornado hitting? And looking at half of a house gone and people sitting outside of that house. The house is, thankfully, some people have gotten up there and covered half that house with the part that is gone, covered it with a tarp. So they're sitting outside and they're letting their kids play, and the kids are little, they're toddlers.
So they don't know.
So they don't know. They don't know.
On.
They're just happy that mommy and daddy are sitting outside in the chair and they can run around and play. And their parents are like, "Don't do that." And I was just I'm just laughing at the innocence of the moment. And I'm thinking about how these people know that the likelihood that they'll be able to stay here is low. What are they going to do? And they're probably sitting outside because it's beautiful weather and they have no electricity inside, which I didn't think about because luckily it was a beautiful day. Yet there were power lines down. Like, the power lines were laying in the piles of trees. Like, it's not... Yeah. It's
and some of the things that were there that aren't there anymore are the power lines.
Yeah, some of the things that are
it's the most bizarre.
And so, just knowing that we can sit here and we can record. We have electricity. Our things are charged. We don't have to use a power bank. We don't have to go into a YMCA and use the bathroom. It's. I saw people hauling porta potties, and like the things that I was grateful in seeing were the most absurd things ever.
And the most basic things.
Basic things. I was happy to see people randomly delivering porta potties.
Right. I mean, but that's the thing though. It's like, and I feel like the empathy, like we've lost a lot of empathy in the country for people.
Yes.
And
people as people.
People as people.
All people as
people. I went down a YouTube rabbit hole yesterday. I don't know what got into me.
I'm gonna thump you.
You know you're not.
Okay.
You might, but I doubt it.
Okay.
It might have been the day. It doesn't matter. It was within the past 2 days, and I was watching the body cam footage. Like, 'cause they have whole YouTube channels where you can just watch body cam footage of police officers and police interactions.
Sometimes it
dealing
pops up.
Dealing with people.
I watch the short snippets.
I was watching the 30-minute long clips of the whole things. And I'm gonna take it there, and I didn't want to, but sometimes, like, I was watching the clips, and we're at the place where, like, these ladies were being disruptive someplace, and they were screaming, like, "Are you liberals? Are you arresting us because we're MAGAs?" And they were in an area where there was almost certainly that was not the thing. Like, they were actually doing the most, and they earned their handcuffs. I'm not gonna lie, but the fact that was the conversation, and I know a lot of people on both sides of the aisle where it's like, oh, MAGA, oh, liberal, oh, woke, oh, whatever, and it's like we're all just people. and we're people are literally on the edge of destruction every moment of the day.
Yes.
And it doesn't take anything for something to happen, and in a moment your life is changed
Or over.
And we've reduced the conversation in a lot of places down to MAGA, woke, liberal, whatever. When something like this happens, the only thing, in my opinion, that matters is human. Save your human, and I have my pet, save my pet. Safety. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Food, shelter, all those things that are disruptive, that are disrupted, and people have nowhere to go, and don't know what they're gonna do. And when something like that, you don't even know how you're gonna eat. And incidentally, the thing that's crazy about this storm, or about the tornado, is that we've had at least 2 or 3 thunderstorms since then. And I'm sitting up here and I'm like, these people have lost the side of their house. They have no shelter basically, and they're like,
So also back to that tornado lung thing.
Yeah.
So back to the tornado lung thing part of it. So every time it rains, all I think about is the mold.
Yep.
I think about the asbestos being kicked up.
Yep.
I think about the lead paint making a lead paint sludge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it'll pool in the water and all this stuff, and
yes.
it'll just be really...
Yes. Also, are we almost there?
Almost where?
At the end.
Well...
Okay. Well, even if we're not,
I mean,
my
this is our podcast. We can.
This is true. Wherever we want to go.
Yeah.
Got you. So, in the midst of this, in the midst of dealing with my own emotions in regards to the humanity and lack of humanity at times I've seen in the situation, I woke up to the beautiful... No, I'm not going to be sarcastic. I woke up to the horrific news that Congress, the House, passed the bill to cut Medicaid and Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps.
All of it.
All of it. Right?
Yeah.
So, my first thought, in the midst of this tornado, these people who possibly cannot receive their mail or are going to be too in shock to be notified, potentially have to deal with the fact that they're going to lose some of the things that they need.
Just to survive.
Yeah.
Just for basic survival.
And, in my thing with... My thing with Medicaid is it is always painted as propping up. It's always painted as propping up someone, when in truth the biggest losers in regards to these cuts will be children. And it's going to be children. I refuse to say where I sit in regards to abortion just because I don't feel like it today. My energy's not quite there yet. Abortions are hard to come by in most states now. And Medicaid covers pregnant women. It's the health insurance that they have in order to sustain them through pregnancy. And it is cut off after you go to that first well child check, typically. So it literally only covers pregnancy and makes sure that you maybe don't hemorrhage out. Maybe. Because there's no guarantee of that, knowing how maternal health is. in this country, especially if you're a woman of color, especially if you're poor. People with disabilities. And on top of that, another assault on humanity. What isn't considered is when there's cuts made to Medicaid and Medicare and all that, people also lose jobs. And I'm not talking about the people who handle the applications. I'm talking about caregivers, CNAs, nurses, even doctors who are providing like home health care type things to people with disabilities in their homes. Like the cutting Medicare and Medicaid by itself destabilizes our every time a cut is made to that particular segment of the population, it destabilizes our healthcare system. And it's at a time, we're talking about St. Louis. Apparently the same storm system went down to Kentucky as well. In regards to the House of Representatives, two people who voted for this Medicaid cut are nurses. And that enraged me even more. I don't know. Doctors take the Hippocratic Oath. Nurses say the Nightingale Pledge. All of it ultimately is do no harm. We know that every field has people in it who aren't about that. I'm amazed at the amount of people who who find a way to make vile choices and justify them. And it is vile. Because that same bill also gave a $664 million tax cut to the top 1% of the population.
I mean, what I would encourage everybody to do is to pay close attention to what's happening around them. And to try and practice some empathy for not just you and your neighbors, but then who are your neighbors? Because as I said, ultimately, like the way that this country actually functions, we're all in this together. And what this is just blaring to me is that we've just got to act like it. We've got to find our way back to that as a country. And when it comes to what's happening in St. Louis right now, support. We'll put a list of organizations that are doing the work here in St. Louis in the description. And do you have anything else?
Do no harm. Find a way to find it within yourself to be good to those around you. If you cannot think past the 10 people around you, be really good to those 10 people. and encourage those 10 people to be really good to the next 10 people around them. Because ultimately, we cannot maintain our humanity without looking at those around us. It's impossible to be a good person and care nothing about the people around you. And don't assume anything. Assume that everything told to you is a lie. Especially on the internet. You know, talk to the people and find out the truth.
And there you have it, guys. Episode 4, Fighting Foolishness. Thank you for joining us. Every little bit helps when it comes to support. So check the link in the description in order to find resources. Mm-hmm. And thank you for joining us.